you have this view of making the smallest tea worker in a factory to be more empowered in the way they are employed in the tea estate. So, in a decision making in a tea industry is typically a tripartite activity. It involves the government, the tea garden, and the worker. So, if you have to fulfill that vision of making the smallest tea workers in any given garden, what kind of policy change, or more importantly, what kind of mindset change do you think is required in tea industry? I know that Amalgamated Plantation works with more than 1,000 small farmers, and also in Munnar it is kind of a cooperative structure. But what kind of mindset change or policy change that you think is required?
You see, that's a very front-loaded question. It's a very difficult question to answer in a short while. Yet I know, meaning for you and for people who are going to view us later, it is actually something that they don't want to get bored with, because it requires a lot of academic discussion as to what are the options.
Yeah, so just maybe 2-3 pointers on this.
I will give you 2-3 pointers, but it would be unfair to just give you 2-3 pointers without a framework. So let me give you the framework. See, the framework of the regulated tea industry is not based only on 3 things. The most important is the consumer. If there is no consumer, people like you and me, people like you and me, if we don't have tea, then who will tea sell? So I think the fourth person, there's a government research regulation. There's somebody who is an investor who does the investments. And actually, there are the workers who invest and also actually are part of the entire ecosystem. But the consumer is the most important. Because if the Unilever, if the Tata Global Beverages, if the Walmart, if the smaller organization, right, who buy tea selling in Mama, they don't buy you fully. So a lot of it is dependent on demand, supply, and price. I think that's a very important part to put in any of the discussion. So I've always said in these discussions that when government calls people, they call people who are only the people who are manufacturing, or they call the workers. But the workers and management and investors sit on the opposite sides of the table. They never sit along. So Tata's and Amalgamated had a move. And what we really did was we gave 20% roughly of our shares to the workers. But that has not worked very successfully so far, because the tea industry 5 years ago went into a depression. What does that mean? That means our cost of manufacture was higher than the cost of recovery. As a result, there was a gap, and as a result, we make a loss. Now, that loss is for many reasons. One was productivity, as I alluded to. The other is the fact that we're not getting enough from the consumer. That consumer forces have been upset by the apple cart of 52% being from smaller poor, who I do not say make bad quality, who I say make quality at a more affordable price. And therefore, we are challenged by making the same tea and not having a differentiation to get a bigger price. So I think that's really where it is. To change all this, of course, a mindset change is required. The mindset is being changed by what I call the democratization of cost. Because every worker and his child has a mobile phone. Has got information that mobile phone has, movies that mobile phone has, news that mobile phone is already affecting that change. The mindset change is to have a different lifestyle. I'm not saying better. After Corona, you don't say the lifestyle in cities is going to be better, because people who are not in cities are in a much better format and much better way than people in cities. But they dream to have a bigger house, bigger education, better healthcare. So they dream for universality of everything that is in urban areas, which people dream of, as is depicted by communication or advertising and things like that. So I think the mindset change or the mindset want is already there. So I think that if you park that for a while. Now, coming to the investor. As an investor, if I've had a tea garden and I've paid for it, my thing is that I want something within this framework, because that's my comfort zone. But actually what is required is to make sure that we become the same as the small growers and make every single worker a small grower. And actually there should be a division between making the teas and actually growing the teas. So if you grow the teas and actually pluck it and give it to a manufacturer, as is done in China, as is done in Africa, you will find that they will suddenly become owners, and they will have their own houses, and they will have their own structure of housing, education, and healthcare. I think all of this can be done jointly, and it may take a 10-15 year period by which it happens. And I just believe that is not an easy change, because this is a social change with people. There are unions, there are investors. Investors will say, why should I give my land away? Who will pay me back? Government will say, we don't have the money. So it's a complicated discussion. But if you had to, in one way, just describe what the utopian tea estate, the regulated one, will look like, it will look like that where every worker will be owners of the tea estate. They'll be owners of the infrastructure, and they'll create their new panchayats, and they will own their house and get all government schemes for housing and rural and agriculture delivery. That itself will take down the price a little bit, and that will make suddenly in one swoop everybody an entrepreneur. So they will start competing with the people who are there. The question is, the entire debate will be that what about their security? What happens if tea goes down? What happens now? Who will pay them for the tea estate? Meaning, will they get the current fee if they're getting roughly 300 to 400 rupees in total per day, and they get about 9 to 12,000 rupees. In fact, sometimes 15 in the season, plucking a lot more. Is that, will they be able to get the same kind of livelihood? So the issue is around all those issues. Who will buy? What will the government dismantle in terms of rules and make it better? Yes, it is attractive to have your own house, but will they be able to earn enough to manage their own house? Will they be able to appeal to the government and get all their schemes so that there is no poverty? So there's no poverty, and they actually have a livelihood which may be better, not dictated by money, so that they have access to the best healthcare, best education, and option to choose a life. So the universal income, if it is managed that way, the universal home style is managed that way, then I think that we have a model up for debate, if not for actual action.
Yeah, so it's a fine battle among a lot of things. Hopefully things will move that way. As you say, it will take about 10-15 years if the industry people really take stock of that and start working on that.
Correct.
Right. Okay. I know that you are a social entrepreneur, and when you are talking about your talking just a while back, you have been using this word social quite a few times. So also when I talked to you previously, you mentioned about biodiversity. You also mentioned something called cultural human diversity. So are they kind of related? If they are, how they are connected? I have never heard the word called cultural human diversity. So I kind of really liked and would like to know more about what is the connection between the two.
That again is a full new subject. It could be a whole series which I'm happy to do. But I can tell you this much. What is culture? Culture is a whole plethora of communication with people, the whole way how you eat, the whole way how you live, the whole way how you clothe, the whole way how you write. Your entire feelings actually come out in processes like that. My situation is that if you look at it, the Northeast is actually a potpourri of, it's an amalgam. And if you really look at the tea garden, there's a cultural diversity which there is short of none. There are people from Andhra, there are people from Orissa, there are people from Chhattisgarh, there are people from Jharkhand, there are people from Bihar, there are people from Bengal, and there are people local Assamese. So there's 7 communities already who have different thoughts, different cultures, who have different languages. That is one. Assam itself has about 20 different tribes. A little bit, they may have all been from the Tibeto-Burman kind of origin, but really meaning from the Tibetan Mekong Valley kind of civilization which moved on to Burma and came away. Assam itself has 20 different delivery items, meaning where I have an investment in tourism in Assam, in Tezpur, there are 7 communities there. Let me just tell you: Nishi community, the Boro community, the Mishing community, the Bengali, the Adivasi, the Caste Hindu Assamese, the Muslim Assamese, and then you have another 2 different communities which I can't recall, who actually are thriving. So a combination of these 20 and these different people that have come from Bihar and Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha. I think you could not have more diverse sort of situation than that. If the
Almost like Indian Army. They have like people from all over the country.
Almost like the United States of Assam, USA.
Yeah, United States of Assam. Yes.
Really what it would be. So I think in that, it is so interesting that actually in terms of biodiversity, the Eastern Himalaya and the sub-Indian Himalayan region, including the river, I think are probably one of the most diverse, biodiverse cultures. And the reason is because there is snow line to sea line. If you take away the politics of it, actually there is from Bhutan to Bangladesh, what we call. But actually that is the snow line to sea line. Right up to Bangladesh and to Myanmar. From the whole cultural diversity is such, therefore different temperature, different soil construct, different geological features, different anthropological features which we talked about. I think you have a very, very powerful situation to say that the most biodiverse region in India or in Asia is probably this area in terms of the population area regime, in terms of biodiversity species that exist. So I think it's very important to understand that biodiversity in terms of the rock structure, in terms of snow line to sea line, in terms of the people structure, which is anthropology, and in terms of the kind of plants, animals, food, fruits, bees, butterflies, you cannot get it better in nature than that.
A lot of tea estates are also like, they call themselves biodiversified tea estates because they take care of a lot of these things that you are mentioning. Is there one in Assam that you could talk about? Like, I know a couple of them in Darjeeling. I'm not really sure about the ones in Assam.
I think everybody has realized one thing, that monocultures are not good. So what the British did when they came, and rightly at that time, it was about industrialization, that was the model, that was how do we make it productive, this was a ready-made market, so there was market, government and investor. They actually bought the tea, there was unemployment in places, they brought the workers, they took it and sold it. So this was done by breaking and bringing down the entire forest. The entire forest and biodiversity of the forest was reduced to what is called just the tea plant, Camellia sinensis, along with shade trees.
Yeah, I've heard this, yes.
So basically it became a monoculture. What everybody is saying now, they're quite happy with that. We are an eco-friendly, we are basically organic, we are basically wanting to make tea very friendly with nature, and we are biodiverse. I'm sure there are tea estates like that. I haven't seen one in my travels, right from Darjeeling to other places, but many people have made good attempts at growing more agroforestry. The balance of agroforestry will bring back some of the life of which was there before 1835, which was the forestry along with tea. And that in a mixture will be good. And that's why the small tea growers have high productivity, and probably if they don't follow the monoculture route and bring about a balance, I think that they will be able to convert tea gardens into agroforestry and have much more delivery. For example, betel nut, for example, coconut, for example, pepper, for example, palm, for example, a whole lot of trees from Dalchini to long elaichi, whatever is possible to actually do there is possible. And therefore, small tea growers have that already. So they have multiple cropping by default. So now, from a monoculture, you move to agroforestry and a biodiverse delivery system, which will be very, very impactful and interesting in terms of the tea culture. There are attempts to make it. We in one of our estate, Hatikuri, tried to convert it.
Yeah, I've tried the tea, yes.
We have tried to convert it into wholly organic. I think we failed. We failed primarily because of three reasons. We didn't know how to convert it. I think it was lack of knowledge for us. It was a lack of knowledge for the tea industry. But there was nobody who knew how to connect an estate which was over 100 years old, non-organic, back into organic. That's a very tough discussion and a tough decision and a tough action plan to follow. Because the earth itself had to change. The roots had to change. The water within that had to change. There was a whole 100 years way of cultivation and then go to organic. As a result, if we were producing 1600 to 1800 kilos, that was the garden's model was based on that. and the profitability was great. It dropped to 600, 400, 500 kilos per acre. So we never got any encouragement to make sure it was that. And the front end price didn't go up as much. So if the front end price we got 200, 250, our front end price to break even at that level of 600 was over 800 or 900 rupees a kilo. So therefore there was always a challenge. So I can tell you from experience that actually it was not a great decision, primarily because of lack of knowledge. I don't even know if it's ever possible to convert a inorganic garden fully into organic. I don't even know. But there may be people who are wiser, and I'll be happy to be advised and to learn on that. So that's how that
All right. Yeah, get that. Okay.